Welcome to the Morning Route Podcast. I am your host, Shane Johnson. We've got something for transportation pros, educators, parents, and everyone who appreciates the important role school buses play in our education system. So grab your favorite cup of coffee and let's hit the road.
Hey, good day here, listeners and the viewers. Welcome to the Morning Route Podcast. With us today, I got a special guest all the way from the beautiful state of Wisconsin, Dan Kobussen. So Dan, welcome to the Morning Route Podcast.
Good morning, everybody. This is awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. I know you and I talked back when we were at the DC bus-in back in Washington, DC, there was a couple months ago. And I'd asked you, hey, would you be interested in coming on and joining me? And you said, absolutely. So thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for the follow-up and your willingness to come on here today.
Honored to be here. And you guys got a great product. I think this is a fabulous idea. I've watched 90% of what you've put out, and it's all good stuff. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate that. I know you're going to have some good stuff to add that to today. So looking forward to our conversation and our content here, and hopefully people will find it interesting, excuse me, and helpful in their company. So why don't we do this? Tell us a little bit about Dan Kobussen Bus.
Kobussen Bus is a family-run third-generation company, much like some of the companies in Minnesota. By the way, am I the first non-Minnesota contractor on the show?
You are. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you for that honor. Anyway, third generation school bus. We also run some motor coaches. My grandfather started out as a milk hauler and farmer. Didn't really like to work too much on the farm, so he took the milk to town. And, that wasn't enough talking for him. So he had to stop at other farmers and find out what they were doing. So eventually they asked him to take their kids to town, to go to school.
Wow.
So in 1938, he started a bus company. The local school district said, hey, will you do this for us?
Wow.
And from there, they, grew and grew and grew. I graduated from college, 90s. Mid 90s. And my brother and I got into the company, and we decided, the only way for this to work is we have to grow. We have to grow the product. It's grow or be consumed, right. I guess. Economics of scale, as it were. So we've grown it now to probably we're actually shooting for, 1,000 buses, but we're at about 850.
Wow.
And growing a little bit every year still.
Wow.
So.
Does that 850 number encapsulate both yellow and motor coaches?
Yes, but we have very few motor coaches. We only have 20 motor coaches.
Okay.
So
it's mostly all yellow.
Mostly all yellow, yeah.
So grandfather started off one bus. I'm sure he'd be very proud of you guys today with where you guys have taken Kobussen Bus. And congratulations on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what in Wisconsin, I know here in Minnesota, the contractor to school district ran services about 60% contractors, 40% school district do their own buses. What is that percentage in Wisconsin?
It's very similar to that. That's always an interesting one for me because it affected, how do you guys measure that? Is that by bus or by district? How are you doing that? So that's my question for you.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I do believe it's by districts.
Yeah. Ours too. It's about 60-40.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of smaller districts that are still district run, really.
Okay.
There's a couple larger ones, but not very many.
Yeah.
But it's very similar to Minnesota. I do think we're a little bit more consolidated than Minnesota is. And we are losing more and more.
Okay.
But that's just a matter of time, and we'll talk about that some more as we go into things.
So about how many districts then does Kobussen Bus currently serve?
We've got about 33 school districts,
Okay.
but we only have 23 locations because that's the name of the game is to combine some of those.
Yeah.
I know if you guys have that. It's an interesting question. I don't think I know. Is our school district back in the day were able to basically say, this is how big I want my school district to be, or they went to the farmers and said, which school district do you want to be in?
Mm-hmm.
And they got to choose.
Yep.
So we have some school districts that are ginormous and we have some school districts that are tiny. Is that the way Minnesota is?
Yeah, the same way. And if you look at the map of the districts, Wisconsin would be my guess, would look the same. You'll have this district and none of it makes sense. It's all jaggedy. It might go through a lake, but then there's got the district line, but maybe a quarter mile away, there's a little box that one farm was in. That farmer decided many years ago, right, I want to go here. So yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
That's exactly what we did. Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think we're at about 28 school districts, currently as well. So, pretty spread out. We're all the way from the Iowa border up to the Iron Range. And then we go from Wisconsin over to the Dakotas. So got a pretty big footprint, here in Minnesota.
Yeah, we're pretty much the same way, but we're not in the Milwaukee market. I don't know. You guys probably are not in the Minneapolis market, probably.
No,
Not really, right?
no, we're just, the closest one we have to the metro area is a school district or a town called Shakopee. So it's South Metro, but it's not in the heart of the metro at all.
Right.
Yeah. So mostly stay on gravel. We tell people we're all state buses. We run a lot of gravel.
Well, that's another big difference. We don't have any gravel.
Okay.
I don't think I know of any of our districts that have gravel.
That's
Maybe
really
actually
unique about Wisconsin. I remember hearing that many years ago from somebody. I forget who I was talking to. Yeah, there's no gravel in Wisconsin. It's all blacktop. Pretty interesting. What's behind that?
The only thing I can think of is the dairy cow, that, and we always just talk about that too, and it's that doesn't hold true as much anymore. Again, farmers are kind of going away, but, for years, the dairy industry, ruled, and, those cows, the milk needed to move, right? So,
Right.
The snowplows needed to get down those roads, and that may have propagated the pavement. I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't know.
That's really
Just
interesting.
been that way forever for me, so I don't know.
It's all nice for you guys. You don't have to worry about
Right,
gravel.
right.
So yeah,
Right.
Minnesota should take note. And so with that too, something I really want to talk about and highlight, for our listeners too, is that Dan, you currently are serving as the NSTA, president of our national association. So thank you for your service in that. I know, that probably keeps you away probably from some of your day-to-day duties, at Kobussen Bus. And so there's a sacrifice, to that service. And I just want to say thank you for that, for you doing that. I think this July will be the end of, your term, as president, and be handing the reins over to, Patrick Dean from Dean Transportation. But if you would maybe take some time, share with us some of maybe the highlights, of your term, successes that you've had, which have been many, been able to kind of be a part of it on the board, but, watch some of your accomplishments, and maybe one or two things like, hey, we just didn't get that across the finish line. So maybe it's still in the work of NSTA here over the next year or so.
Well, truly, it's been an honor. It's humbling, been a humbling experience. Yeah, it takes me away from my work a little bit, but at the same time, it's worthwhile. It's interesting. I get to meet a lot of folks such as yourself, and find it, and I find it 3/4 of what I do. I find out more information about, what you do or how somebody else does it, this job or that job, or what affects transportation on a daily basis, particularly when we start talking about government regulations. Yeah, I never thought I'd be in this position. It's way beyond something that I would ever, want to do, or I shouldn't say want to do, but, but I'm very proud of it. I'm proud of it. And again, honored that, the association has elected me here. Some of my achievements, I don't know if there's so much my achievements or my predecessors, or even about Kurt a little bit earlier at NSTA, really setting us up, and we are, in step, just making things happen right now. Well, financially, we're super strong. We have great attendance at the meetings. We have great interaction with, contractors, new contractors, vendors coming on board. We've had some great locations, which I'm not sure Patrick will be able to catch up with. I've had Hawaii, and I've had, Nashville. He's gonna
No pressure on Patrick.
Yeah, no pressure there for locations. But yeah, we are just rocking it.
Yeah.
Rock and roll, moving forward. There's always, work to be done. We need to promote the school bus and the school bus driver more. I think that's something I've always wanted to get, back to, is, the school bus driver is really where it's at. We all know we have driver shortages, and those are the folks who, the rubber meets the road kind of thing.
Right.
you really need to get back to that promotion of that.
Right. And I think one of the things has happened under your tenure too, talking about the school bus drivers, is the rodeo, getting that going again. And maybe if you want to just talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, we've got well, rodeo's not the right word. It's safety competition. I use that word. It's hard to get rid. It's a habit, right?
Yeah, it's we call the rodeo forever, but yeah,
forever, right? And to be honest on that, I was delivering coffee out of a golf cart when I was 12 at the Wisconsin rodeo. That's how ingrained it is in me. And now having it set in Texas, all one location, we know what we have. Kind of we can get in the groove. I really think I wasn't so sure on the front side of this, since we, stopped it for so long, how good it would come back. But boy, it seems to be, it's exciting. People are excited about it. Got pretty good attendance again this year. We just got to get it, back down to the state level. I know Minnesota's having a little bit of a challenge with that. Wisconsin, we got ours, and we didn't have one for years. Even before COVID, we stopped it. And we brought it back. We're doing all right here all as well. It's fantastic. And that kind of goes back to my piece with the promoting the drivers. We need to get this to be a bigger deal and need to make sure. And I don't know how to do that exactly, because we have drivers internally to Kobussen that are great drivers. And if we could just get them, to step out and try to do one of these rodeos, it would be great. It would be awesome to, see their skills out there and make it, make it a world-class event, which I think it will become. Regardless of that, I think it's awesome. I just can't say enough about folks that are putting that together. Bill Loshball and that intro. It's awesome.
Yeah. They're definitely doing a great job with, again, it's kind of like you said, it went away for quite a few years. It's bringing it back. I'm really excited to say Minnesota's bringing it back. MAPT is kind of taking the reins here, but MSBOA, or state association, coming alongside that. The state patrol is involved again. So we're going to have an event here this summer as well. So we're very excited about getting it back here in Minnesota. But on the national level, like you said, just really highlighting and showcasing drivers, right? Because that's what our industry is all about. So thank you, Dan, for your work on that. And I know, like you said, there was others that were really instrumental in getting this thing put back together. So very excited about where that's going to lead and where it's going to go. So very exciting.
Right. It's a big deal.
Yeah. I know you just were down in Des Moines, shifting gears here a little bit, down there at the National Congress School Transportation, representing probably Wisconsin and NSTA, maybe kind of a two hats, maybe. So just wanted to get your perspective, takeaway from the Congress. I think it was the first one because they didn't do one during COVID. So how many years has it been since?
10 years.
So 10 years, that's a long time, especially you look at everything that's happened in the last 10 years in our industry, right? So it's crazy to really think went that long. But what were some of your takeaways, maybe highlights again from the Congress, things that we can maybe expect to see here in the next 6 months, 1 year?
The Congress is an interesting product. If our folks don't know what that is, it's they're making basically national standards, which we can't really call it standards, but it's a national Congress. They put together a best practices, let's say, book on how to operate school buses. So they go everything from specs of the bus all the way to how to tie down a wheelchair or some operational stuff that's in there all as well. It happens every 5 years. It's done a 5-year cycle. Unfortunately, it changed to 10. And even the 5-year cycle, at first glance, you think, oh my gosh, 5 years, a lot of things can happen in 5 years. However, once you kind of get in the sense of this, we're not trying to predict the future. We're not trying to write everything down because things change, right? So this is more of a, let's stop and see how far we've gotten and write it down once, and if things happen in the meantime, we all can adjust to that. That wasn't what his intentions were. His intentions were to have a guidebook on how to do these things. So it's a pretty cool book. Going forward is going to be interesting. It's Well, let me go back to where we're at currently. Without Mike Larocco and Rana Weber running that, I don't think we would have got it off the ground. So those two really pushed us to the finish line. Wouldn't have happened without them. Moving forward, there are some challenges. We are talking about changing it to every 2 years or whatever whatever is possible to do with
Right.
that, whatever people think we should do. We're also looking for volunteers who wants to, continue this process and help out. And it is, it's the whole industry's
Yep.
manual. So it's out there and available.
Yeah, and I think I always find it interesting for people that don't know when, you got the writing committee and, there's a couple different committees with this. And I think sometimes there's maybe some passion involved. I've never been part of it, so I'm only relaying what folks tell me that have been there. When you get into the should or the may, those words matter, right?
Right.
So it's probably some being mindful, I would assume, of again those words specifically when you guys are putting those in the manual.
And, over the years, a lot of that kind of the English language has
Mhm.
gotten straightened out. And so it's gotten a lot easier. So we're not sitting there saying, should this be should or could or would or
Right.
maybe. So now it's a lot more about, technology and how things have changed and even referencing better laws or referencing different, ideas that are out
Right.
in the public. So it's gotten a lot better that way. So it's not as much argumentable about would or should and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I understand. They had it scheduled for 2 full days. You guys were done in a day and a half, so everybody got along pretty good. It sounds like, right? So
Right.
you guys made
Yeah,
hay.
right. And even the process has gotten better where you can, you submit your changes up front,
Okay.
to those committees and the committees vote on them or rebuttal them and say, well, no, we're not going to have pink school buses because that would, take a lot
Right.
of work. There's things like that so it gets done beforehand. So it's not such a,
Definitely some
cons-
efficiencies then.
correct.
Yeah. No, that's good to hear. So it sounded like one of the points of conversation at the Congress was the alternative transportation. And I think that's something that we've even talked about, at state association levels, NSTA. There's been conversations had about alternative transportation and maybe the future of that. For people that don't know what that is, it's a lot of van type services that are really specialized in van service versus the yellow school bus. And I know for us here at Palmer, full disclosure, we have about 200 vans in our fleet. My guess is, Dan, you guys probably have some at Kobussen. So there's a lot of us contractors that run yellow school buses, also run van type 3 services. In Minnesota, we call it type 3 services for special ed students. But there's a lot of companies out there, growing companies or companies that are merging that are running strictly van service and they don't have yellow. So there's conversation that's happening within that. Is there anything that you can share from the conversation at the Congress that tipping the scales one way or the other, or thoughts or ideas about the future of alternative transportation?
Before I get to that, I wanted to make sure I said something to thank Brian Rue, your state patrol guy. He was on the NCST and he took care of a lot of inspection piece for me. He was my go-to guy for that.
Yeah,
Thank
good guy
him
to go
for-
to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a good guy. Anyway, back to alternative transportation. The one thing that NCST did was alternate transportation. They took it and defined it as anything other than a school bus. So that included the transit bus, the motor coach, and the minivan. So I think that to me kind of muddied the waters a little bit.
Mm.
And especially when they started talking about people started talking about what kind of education the driver should have, or what kind of certification should they have, or, that kind of thing. So it got a little muddy there. So that was one of my challenges with it.
Okay.
Beyond that, I think it was a pretty good, it was, again, back to your shall and should. We had a good conversation about it, and everybody kind of went round and round and round about how it should lay out. And it laid out just like we thought it would, as, it's minivan services, transportation, school.
Right.
But do we need more certification on that? Higher standard for those folks. There's
Right.
examples of, vans picking up in the driveway or, on the street and, almost, causing other issues, but taxis do that too. So, and actually that was part of it too, is taxis are included in alternative transportation. So it's a tough one. We know it's growing. It's your point. You have a lot of special ed using it, a lot of, and I think it's something that really needs to be watched, because I think of the robo-taxi, and I know think I'm crazy, like jumping way out ahead, but if we suddenly have vehicles that don't have drivers in them, and that's much more cost efficient, then, that means even more kids are going to come out of those school buses and go into, into
No,
cars.
I don't think you're crazy at all for thinking that. I've had the same thoughts, even actually same conversations with others too. And again, that's one of the questions about the future of this alternative transportation, right? So I think it's good and healthy that we're having these conversations today to, where do we need to land with this, right? And I can honestly say I don't have the answer either. I don't know if any of us exactly have the answer today, but it's important to have the conversation for sure. And try to, like you said, the muddy waters, and we got to unmuddy these waters here a little bit, and land somewhere with this van service. Yeah. So any other takeaway, big takeaways from the Congress?
Well, again, it's I think if anybody's interested in getting involved in that, absolutely, give me a call. Just go to the website, find out what you can find out there.
Yeah.
It's a great product.
Yeah.
It's, there's some decisions to be made there as far as how often we're going to do this going forward. Or, does it need to be done?
Is it 2 years, 3 years? Do you still want to go to Des Moines, or do you want to go to Key West, Florida? It sounds like a lot of those conversations were happening.
Right. Yeah. And there's all sorts of things that go along with that. There's cost involved in Key West.
Right.
I don't know. We might not be able to get those people back to the room. So it'd take weeks for the conference to happen then if it was in Key West.
Yeah, you got to be careful where you end up going, right?
Yeah, they'd all be on the Ball Street all week. Yeah.
Right, for sure. So no, again, thank you for attending and being part of that. It's important for our industry. Like you said, some people will adopt the whole book. I believe North Dakota adopts it as is. I don't know if any other states do, but it's important for all of us, and there's good things that come from that. So thank you. Thanks again for taking the time to go and represent there as well. So again, you've been in this industry your whole life. So I have to ask, like, for you personally, what are some of the big changes? Like, I never thought I would see that. I'm just curious, like, what are the big ones that had an impact on you and have had an impact on you?
I don't think there's that much change. I think everything changed, right? Everything changed. Nothing stays the same. You can, there's all those sayings out there. And I think, yes, it's different than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever. It's like 30 years ago that I'm in here. It's different, but it's the same, right? I go back to two points in my life. One was, I met my wife when I was talking to my father-in-law, and I said, it's a great business. He was in the bar and restaurant business most of his life. And he's an accountant by trade. So he didn't really understand. I said, it's a great job. It's that we have long-term contracts with school districts that will always pay us. We don't deal with a lot of cash or anything like that. So we don't have any, losses or anything like that. We employ bus drivers that go out and do their routes. And who doesn't love bus drivers? I mean, they're great people. They just take care of themselves. They keep the bus at home half the time, and they just, pick the kids up and go to school.
Right.
However, it's a genius business. It's super easy. Well, that was completely wrong because, here we are. Right. And that takes me to my other stories. My dad told me one day, he said, the business is super easy. There's really only 4 things that involve school buses. It's the bus, it's the fuel, it's the insurance, and it's labor or the bus driver, right?
The people.
Those
Yep.
4 things. And he said over his career, basically one of those was always in flux. So, he's always got one that's a challenge, right? Well, I think over my careers, there's been 2 and sometimes 3 or even 4 are in flux. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
So nothing stays the same, but at the same time, I mean, a perfect example would be the kid. I was on a conversation this morning, actually, talking about student behavior. And I was like, well, years ago, we would use the AM/FM radio, turn it on, turn it to the station the kids wanted to hear.
Right.
And if they were acting up on the bus, we'd turn it off, and then they'd be all mad. And you'd say, well, if you guys quiet down, I'll turn it back on. Well, now they don't even want the radio on, right?
No.
They got their own headset. They got their own stuff. So you can't even use that anymore. So it changes, but it's the same. You still have kids that act out. You still have, you still have those issues. They're just different. So I don't know if it's that different.
Yeah. It just kind of evolves, right? I think the issues are there. Very wise on your dad's part. Those 4 things I obviously true today as well. I wouldn't say far off from that. But yeah, I remember this was obviously a lot of years ago when I was in the service, and I was just a little whippersnapper, and I was probably like 19 years old when I thought I knew everything, right? And I was complaining about something. I don't remember what it was, and I had this old senior chief. You have to remember back when you're 18, 19, and a senior chief of the Navy probably at that time is like 38, but he looks like he's 60. He's just been through the ringer, right? And so it's just this old crusty looking guy to me. But I remember him saying to me as I was complaining about whatever I was complaining about, and he goes, Johnson, if the Navy didn't change, we'd still be sailing around wooden ships. And I've never forgotten that. Like, you do have to change. You do have to evolve. I think you're right though, Dan. There's still the same, right? The core issues are probably still the same, but we're still changing and we're still evolving. You look at the electric bus, right? It's probably one that jumps out. That kind of just hit the market a few years ago. It seems like, and it's just been this huge change in our industry. And there's some other things, but yeah, I mean, we're changing, but the things are still the same. The bus price is still high, right? Still got to pay a driver to drive it. It's just a different fuel source, but there's complications with that fuel source, getting infrastructure, right? So it's same problem. Yeah, totally agree with that. So, and I know I made some notes and some challenges or changes in our industry, again, going back to the people side, the driver shortage, right? I don't think we're out of the woods with the driver shortage. I don't think we'll ever be out of the woods with the driver shortage. I think that is something that's here to stay. It doesn't even, for me, it doesn't even bother me anymore because that's just what it is, right? Okay. We just got to find a solution. We got to work around it, get creative with it. For us, I think we're seeing a mechanic shortage. I don't know what you guys maybe are experiencing at Kobussen. But I think another challenge that we're seeing too is, the decline in student ridership on the yellow school bus. And you touched on that a little bit earlier. But to me, there's a big concern there as you look at the growth rate birth rates in the United States and this and that. I think it's going to get worse. That number of kids that are on the yellow school bus and district budget cuts that I think we all see and experience as contractors. So a lot of challenges, changes in our industry that we're seeing. Any thoughts on any of those things I threw out? Anything you want to add to that? Or
well, a bunch of things I got there, but one I could say is that back to my dad's 4 things. Fuel. We never talked about fuel through this whole thing, although we did talk a little bit about alternative fuels. But fuel costs have really, been an effect over the last few years. Driver shortage, I'm right there with you. It's something that you just got to deal with. It's harder and harder to find them, but I do think, and a lot of people don't see it that way, but I think as the economy gets worse, usually means we have more drivers.
I agree with that.
People pick up that second job. Mechanic shortage, we see it. It's not, I would say mechanic, the shortage really, I don't think there's too much of a shortage per se. We see that price of their payroll going way
Waiver.
up. I mean, the market is really driving that up.
Yeah.
We think we've seen a better mechanic turnout just because we have more gasoline buses and propane buses.
Interesting.
It's easier, or if you have a kid that's a gearhead, he at least knows how his car engine works. He then can transfer that to the bus.
Yeah.
So it's a little easier from that perspective. Declining ridership, yeah, that's a problem with, like you said, the birth rates. But really what we're seeing is like the North Woods, and I know, districts cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting because the North Woods has nobody left. There's nobody up there. There's no industry to keep people there. So, the young kids, when they grow up, they're moving away. They're moving south to the Milwaukee's, the Chicago's, the Madison, just moving south in the state of Wisconsin. Those Northwood school districts are in trouble.
They're struggling.
I don't know where that goes.
Yeah.
I thought COVID would actually fix that. I know some contractors up there that said they hadn't picked up, kids on those lakes in years because they're all Illinois money, big mansions on the lakes. And those Illinois folks moved up there for, the COVID year straight time because they could, right?
Right.
But that didn't last. I was a little surprised. I thought that might provoke those folks to say, you know what, I can do this, that they get back to the cities.
They move back. Interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah. So like I said, yeah, I think, we're definitely agreeing. There's challenges, changes in our industry, and we just got to kind of, flex with that. And I would say I was having a conversation earlier this morning, had some friends from the state patrol stop by and kind of talked for a little while. And one of them made the comment to me. He's like, I don't know how you guys do it. Every day, just with the different things that happen right in our industry, a driver not showing up, or, a student discipline issue, or all those things that just happen. And he goes, it's really impressive looking from the outside in and seeing how creative you guys really need to get, to make this thing work. And so it was a huge compliment, from somebody from the outside. And, it was, I appreciated hearing that comment because typically we never get the kudos, right, for what we do. It's usually you're getting called to the principal's office and, you didn't do this right, or you didn't do that right. And it's complicated to do this. So it's not easy. Going back to your conversation from earlier, it's really easy. No, it's not easy, but we make it go. I think another big challenge too, in our industry is insurance costs, right? I think we'd all agree on that. And how insurance costs are really impacting us in the school bus contracting world. So, take a couple minutes and we peel this back and help maybe those that are listening today understand, how this is affecting our industry.
Sure. Before we get there, let me go back a little bit to what you just said about, outside looking in. A long time ago, and it wasn't one of our ideas. Actually, it came from some other meeting, something else that happened in Wisconsin. But the idea was to have a monthly, or some of them turned into weekly, unfortunately, but a monthly meeting with the school districts. Try and get that superintendent or that business manager into your offices so that they can see what you do on a daily basis. Try and get them there once a month, or maybe even once a year, whatever that is. Have them come in. And I think that's probably the biggest tip I could give anybody that was coming into this industry, is to get them involved, let them know what it takes to what you do, and I think we've done that for so long. I know Rob Nelson, a good old friend from Wisconsin, he got out of the bus business. But anyway, he always used to say, we've done such a good job at making sure we said yes to the school district every time they called, that now that we're saying no, they don't understand. They never knew how hard we worked to say yes. So they need to understand how this process works. To your point, to understand it, we're standing in our bed and spinning around while we get drivers on the seats. So
yeah, no, I love that tip or that advice, and I agree with that. We've had experienced that ourselves with a couple of our locations where the superintendent is very purposeful about coming, whether it be weekly or monthly, and meeting with our site management team. And it has done wonders for, I don't know if it's morale, just use morale, right? The morale of the drivers to see that connection with the district and that the district cares and wants to hear from them. It's not about just what's going like wrong, but also what's going right, because usually it's more things that are happening that are positive, and that can be shared back and forth. And when that happens, then there is room to voice, hey, there's a problem here. And the superintendent or the district official, whoever's there, can help then take care of that. But like to your point about hearing what's going on, right, and having that dialogue and having that relationship, because really that's what it is at the end of the day, is that relationship, right? And if you can build that positive relationship, a lot can be accomplished then at that local level. So no, thanks for sharing that. That's spot on.
You also bring up, I offered superintendents to, when they're doing a referendum or anything for that matter, doesn't really matter, when they're doing a referendum, to come out and talk to our drivers and explain to our drivers why they're doing a referendum. Because most of those drivers are probably their constituents.
Yeah.
And if they can get that information out to those folks easily, why not do that? It's interesting how few times that they take me up on that, but they, I have had it happen.
Yeah.
But, it's a perfect source for them, or a perfect avenue for them to, like you said, if they're engaged already, it's super easy then.
Okay.
Just to, explain what the reasoning is. And they're their constituents. So why not?
Yeah. No, great advice. Yeah. Great advice.
Yep. So insurance, it's fun.
That's a good word for it.
I don't know what you guys are seeing, but it's according to the statistics, it's been 59 consecutive quarters of increased auto liability insurance.
Yeah.
It's been just straight up. And a lot of this could be attributed to either, the buses are more expensive, so they're more expensive to repair, or cars are more expensive by far, and they're more expensive to repair, or insurance companies sent everybody home during COVID, and now they have to hire them all back and have to pay them more or retrain them or whatever that is. But that's not necessarily true. The insurance companies are not, the fall guys here. They're not just keeping the increase and, partying, and off to the Caymans they go or anything like that. It's an expensive thing, and it's not just primary coverage either. It's excess coverage and reinsurance. It's all of it that's getting more and more expensive. And I think it's all, it all comes down to liability or litigation, or we're seeing these, what they call them, nuclear verdicts, and the social inflation,
Right.
where, these folks think they, the car, the bus bumps your car and all of a sudden you get $1 million. That's really taken its toll. And I think it's really taken Wisconsin by storm, because we were this kind of country bumpkin state that really didn't have a lot of litigation. And the attorneys showed up one day and put billboards all over the state, convinced everybody with all the commercials that they should sue everybody under the sun. So here we are. It's really disconcerting at best.
Mhm.
We're seeing, 40-50% increases. It's crazy.
That is crazy. That's probably the simplest and cleanest word we can use right now for that. But yeah, that is it's insane. And again, and you go back to the business application of that. How do we sustain that, right? Like with the contracts that we get from the district, right? And because at the end of the day, that's what we say, and I'm sure every contractor out there does, somebody has to pay for this, right? And you end up having to go back to the district, which is the district then gets the money from the state gets the money from who? The taxpayer. And that's just the cycle of it. And so we're constantly every 4 years or whatever that, the negotiation is up is, it used to be, we just need 2 or 3%, right? And it's not anymore. It's 8%, it's 10%, it's 15%. When you're going back to the districts, and yeah, this is a big piece of it is the insurance cost, right?
Right. And it doesn't matter what it's, even if we perform a lot better, The prices are still going up. The issues are still out there.
Yeah. I know a model that we're going to, and we're just getting the wheels going on it here. We've probably been in it. This isn't my department in operations, our accounting folks that are smarter than me take care of this, but is the self-insured model. And so we're going down this road, and I guess we'll kind of see how it goes. But we're trying something different because of what we're seeing out here in the market.
Right.
Yeah.
But it seems like, just to put some perspective of that, is that there's lots of different kinds of self-insured, right? There's single parent captives, there's just regular captives, there's captive cells, there's all sorts of pieces, parts. And you can learn more about that, by the way, advertising for NSTA. They're having a webinar later, I think this month.
Yep.
Insurance. Tim Wiedeling is doing that. So that's awesome. Again, if you all learn more about that, that's definitely the way to go. But it also is just, like you said, it's just a big old squeeze. And I think it comes down to me, it comes down to tort reform. And tort reform is the laws within the state that allow you to sue for certain things. I always reference Germany would be a good example. Is if you go to Germany, you never see a person walk against the light on a walk zone. You never see a person walk outside the walk lines on the street. The reason is, if you're outside those lines or against the light and you get hit by a car, you not only pay for your own damages, you pay for the damage of the car. That's your fault.
It's your fault.
Not in the United States. That doesn't happen that way. And that's what we got it. And that might be extreme. That might be, not the way it is. But to some extent, we do need to get back to people being responsible for what they're doing, where they are. We get that all the time where our driver, does something to a car in a parking lot. And our driver comes back to us and said, but that car was parked illegally. That doesn't matter. You ran into the car. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But maybe that car should be parked there. Maybe that is part of the deal.
Well,
maybe they should.
A great example of that, and right along those lines, we have it happen. I don't want to say all the time. I don't want all the time, but very frequently, we'll have a bus going into what is called the school bus loading and unloading zone in front of the school, and literally there's signs, school bus only. And who is parked there? The minivan mafia. I always call it the minivan mafia, right? And they're all parked there, because their kids are the most important. And the bus will come in and you know how it is, right? Tail swing. Driver doesn't even know that he might have clipped the bumper of the minivan that was sitting there, or taken them. If they're pulling out, maybe they hit the mirror, and we have to pay for it, even though they're parked loading and unloading in the school bus only zone, which is clearly marked. It's still our fault.
Right.
Very frustrating.
And then, the real big challenge with that, trying to get that fixed, is you can get that fixed in Minnesota, but now you have to go to Wisconsin and fix it. Missouri, and every state, you have to do that 50 times. That's,
maybe it's something, it's a long shot, but I'm a believer in just asking and trying. Maybe there's something at a federal level, like you said, we just talk about this issue within our industry with folks up there in DC, and you just try to plow the ground, right? Of, hey, this is really affecting us as an industry, which again, at the end of the day, the taxpayers pay for, because we have to go back to the district. We have to ask for more dollars to cover what a lot of times is just nonsense, because like you said, you can have the best year. It doesn't matter. Your rates are still going to go up.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Very, very, very frustrating. So is there any tips? I'll just ask you, since we're talking about it, any tips, advice that that an operator can do to maybe save some dollars with their insurance company? Is there forward-facing cameras? Is there types of safety, driver safety meetings that you can have, and you submit that to an insurance company, and maybe they give you discounts? Have you heard anything like that?
Well,
maybe we can ask Tim on the call next week or something.
You can ask Tim. What we're seeing now is, like you just said, you can have the best year in the world and still your insurance rates are going up. I mean, yeah, there's those, and I will say that the camera is the best thing in the world. Where a picture tells 1,000 words, where it tells 1,000 stories, whatever. But that's the technology is great to have it. Unfortunately, most of it is reactionary. So it's after the fact. Prove that this was done right, that kind of thing. But it, it still remains that your insurance rate is a big chunk of what's been happening up there.
Yeah.
And it's challenging, that's for sure.
Yeah. So what I'll do too is, I'll make sure Kathy, who gonna take our pretty faces and our audio, and she'll put all this together. But Kathy's really good. What I'll have her do, Dan, is add
What's up
that,
right here?
yeah,
Something
right there. I'll have her add that information, that seminar with Tim on insurance on there, and have it on there so people can check that out to know where to go with that. So great advice on folks listening to that, being able to connect with Tim Waverlang and maybe trying to get some help on insurance costs. So we'll do that. Switching gears then a little bit. I always like to talk about under the hood. I know Wisconsin has had the under the hood waiver for a few years now. I'm just curious, how has that been going for Wisconsin? In Minnesota, we haven't adopted the waiver. From lack of trying, for me, I'll say that, but I have opposing forces who I respect immensely. We just have a different view on the waiver here in Minnesota. But what have you guys been seeing in Wisconsin? How's it working for you guys?
We're using it slowly, more and more. We're mostly using it internally. We're mostly using it for renewals of folks that that just want to go home to school. That's probably our biggest challenge, is that's really all it's good for, is home to school.
Right.
If they're going to do any charter work outside of, any kind of regular DOT type charters, then it's not legal, or that, the license isn't legal any longer. So we try to, be a little careful with that. But there's folks out there that, they just don't want to, deal with that piece of it. It's a lot of memorization, and let's face it, there's a lot of stuff under the hood that when's the last, I would ask anybody who's against this, I'd say, when's the last time you looked underneath the hood of your car and did a pre-trip of it? So, or, how, and I'm saying that in the face of our airline crisis, basically, but at the same time, our vehicles are known to be that safe, and we, that's like they're going to fall out of the sky. They just pull over to the side of the road. It's not a end of the world if a fan belt falls off, or if they run low on oil. But that's our problem. That's not a DOT issue.
Right.
And again, the other thing that's interesting about that is the fact that we're going towards electric school buses, and nobody's going to look under the hood of those because, well, let's face it, the manufacturers don't want us to look under the hood, right? Because there's so many high voltage, whatever.
Don't touch.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, I just think that it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, just changes, right? There's always change in our industry. And I think there's a mentality of, well, this is what we've always done, right? Like, and can't change that. And it's like, no, I understood the practice and why it was many years ago, right? But like you said, home to school buses are usually within 20 miles probably of the bus barn anyways, and the mechanic's going to come with a spare bus and rescue you. And I get it if you're traveling interstate and you got a driver that's leaving Wisconsin and they're somewhere down in Florida on a charter bus. That's a whole different scenario versus a home to school on a yellow school bus. So yeah, like I said, just interesting on under the hood. I know that I always like to promote this, that there's a bill in the House of Representatives that's out there, the Driving Forward Act, that would make permanent the waiver. So the FMCSA wouldn't have to, look at the waiver every 3 years or whatever it is now, and they would just make that permanent for states to adopt the under the hood. So want to encourage people to reach out to your representatives and ask them to co-sponsor the Driving Forward Act bill that's out there. So anything you want to add to that, Dan?
Well, yeah, if you got any questions about it, you can Google it or, contact NSTA. We'll help you out with background information about it, or how it works, or how in depth it is. Absolutely.
Yeah, appreciate that. I know the other one that's there too, that's really important for our industry, not only national level, but obviously state level, is the Break for Kids Act. That's out there as well. We've had a lot of co-sponsors for that. We need some more. So again, I want to encourage people to reach out to the representatives there, ask them to co-sponsor the Break for Kids Act. Again, as Dan said, if you're not sure what to do, you can reach out to NSTA. They can help point you in the right direction on where to go and who to call to get that one across the finish line. That's a big one. That's the big click it or ticket campaign to raise awareness on the importance of stopping for a stop school bus with the red lights flashing. So we want to keep kids safe. We want to keep kids alive. We need to get that number to zero of kids that are struck by a car that's illegal passing a school bus. So one is too many.
Yep, that's an interesting one because it's can't really come up with a technology that will solve it, right? Even more so, I down in Austin, where the safety competition is there. That's where Tesla's main plant is, and they're having issues with Tesla's passing school buses because the technology in the Tesla robotaxi basically it doesn't understand what a school bus is. So it's fascinating that there is no technology ability that can solve this problem. The only thing that can solve it is telling humans that you gotta stop with the school bus. And while we're doing a not so good job at this point, but we needed some sort of campaign that, like you said, a click it or ticket type campaign that goes nationwide that will educate people to do this. I just, the longer we go without it, the more students are injured and the more bad rap we get as a school bus industry. It's getting, almost epidemic. And I don't know if it's the cell phone or is it what is causing more and more of this to happen. I know we see it on the roads. It's stressful to our drivers and don't have enough drivers the way it is. And now we're adding another level of stress.
Yeah. It is very frustrating. And I was talking with some folks this morning. This is kind of one of the more central parts of our conversation was the illegal passing of school buses here in Minnesota. And I let him know what Congressman Stauber was proposing. So one of the law enforcement guys wants to reach out to him and his staff and talk more about the data. He's got a lot of data to be able to share with it. But you're right. I don't know either where it's coming from. Is it cell phone? Is it just kind of like, I don't care, I'm more important than you and I need to get to work and I don't have time to stop for the school bus? I think there's just probably many factors that are going into just not being educated. They just don't know. I do believe there's a large portion of that. I think in Minnesota, I'm pretty sure in Minnesota, like there's, when you're getting your school bus license at 16, other than like a written, maybe answer a question, do you have to stop for a school bus? Yes or no. I could be off on that a little bit, but I'm dumbing it down. It's just a written part of the test versus maybe what they need to do. And maybe this needs to be a national thing too. Is that part of your driving test is that you encounter a school bus that with the yellow light flashing and then the red lights flashing. And what do you do, right? So actually make somebody during the driver portion of their test, encounter a school bus, stop school bus. So what a great time to educate a kid at 16 when they're getting their license. Like when I see a school bus, I need to stop. But, so a lot there as well, but just kind of watching the time. I don't want to keep you here forever, Dan. I know you probably want to keep going, but you don't have anything else to do. I just want to promote really quick too. NSTA, we're having our summer conference come up here in July, so it's just right around the corner. If you want to talk a little bit about that, what our summer conference is about. And one of the things too, I want to ask the question, I know what the answer is, but I want to ask the question. Say somebody's listening here today and they're not a member of NSTA. They're a school bus contractor, but they're not a member of NSTA. Say they're interested. Dan, if you want to tell them, what they can do to become a member, or say maybe they would just want to check it out. Is the summer conference open to somebody just to check out NSTA?
Yeah, the summer conference is open to anybody who just wants to check it out. Yeah, come on up to Boston. It's going to be a great event. More so than anything, I think it's all networking. You'll get the network with, vendors, you'll get the network with other contractors, and you'd be surprised how other contractors are willing to share how they fixed this problem or didn't fix this problem. If you can just cry in your beer together, whatever that is. You can, find out information and find out what's going on. Obviously, we'll have, federal update, vendor intervention or intervention. We'll have all sorts of meetings. You can look up the agenda actually on NSTA's website. But yeah, you can come on out, just sign up and let them know that you're a new person, and we'll hook you up. We'll even, walk you through everything when we get there. So look forward to see anybody new who's interested in finding out more about NSTA. If you want, to reach out to me directly, you can reach out, reach me at dan@kobussen.com, or even just click on our Kobussen Bus website and come straight through to me. So yeah, we'd love to have more folks out. Again, we appreciate everybody, big, small, doesn't matter what size contractor you are. It does not matter at all. Actually, we're going to get more small folks out there. I think we didn't really talk about that too much. I think there's a, I think we had talked earlier about consolidation and what's happening in Wisconsin and Minnesota and stuff like that. And we've had conversations, my family and myself, about trying to get other folks not only into our business, but into set them up in their own business. If somebody wants to go into the contracting business, we'll help you do it. Just because there's not enough people in this business to sustain what we're doing. It really is going to turn into a whole bunch of big corporations at some point. And that's not good for anybody. It's not good for them either. I'm sure they would be more than interested in gobbling everybody up, but we all know that, having 3 large carriers to choose from is not necessarily the answer.
No, that's not healthy.
Yeah, we need competition and we need different ideas in the industry. So again, that's what NSTA supports. Come on up, see us.
Yep. No, thanks for sharing that. And you're right, we didn't get to that topic. We can circle back on our next one. We'll do another one and we'll talk more about that. But I think, unfortunately, we are seeing, like we call it this way, more of the mom and pops. There's just so much regulation in our industry. I'm just going to say, I think there's over regulation in our industry. I'm for regulation. I think some is good and some is needed. But I think in the school bus world, because we fall into the trucking industry, we don't have our own carve out. Anything that happens in the trucking industry affects us. And that's very frustrating. I think it keeps a lot of good people from becoming a school bus driver. So again, it's probably more conversations that we need to have up in Washington, D.C. is to get out. But again, that's probably for another conversation. These are my opinions. It just has an adverse effect on us. But yeah, so again, we can get to that. Maybe the next one, you and I can spend another 50 minutes together, Dan, if you're open to that.
Yeah.
I do want to say this, and I believe I said this to Kurt Mackinson when I had Kurt on, talking about our conferences. It doesn't matter if you are a contractor with 3 buses or 300 or 3,000. This industry is for all of us, and it's trying to make our industry better, right? So we're stronger together. And I can say this when I think it's been 6 years now, and I can't believe we've only been Palmer Bus Service only been part of NSTA for that short period of time. But the first one I went to, you probably don't even remember this. You were one of the first persons that I met, and you went out of your way to introduce yourself and find out who I was. And that has stuck with me, just so you know that. But it's something I'd like to share with people because, again, it is a community. It is about relationships, and we share with each other what's going well, what we're struggling with, how we can help each other, who we are. Can I help you? And you've been that for me. I've had other folks at NSTA that have shared stories with me that have been very helpful for us at Palmer Bus Service. And hopefully I've been able to reciprocate that back. Like, here's something that we're doing. And somebody else has been able to maybe incorporate that into their business or their operation. That's been helpful. So it's just, we get together, hopefully to, again, make our industry stronger, but also build relationships. So I just want to say thank you for about 6 years ago, having a conversation with me at the first conference I went to.
Well, thank you. You're right.
You didn't know that, did you?
But yeah, that's that's part of the process, part of,
Yeah.
the association. It's good to meet people, find out how they're doing, what can do, what, and it's not all about, figuring out how to do this widget the best way, that's what I like to do, but it's about, you said, relationships and just, where's your pain point? What can we do? How can that be fixed?
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of good stuff comes from that. So again, I'll have Kathy, she'll splash that up there. People could connect with you. I know you shared your contact information already, but we'll put that up there as well if you're good with that. And we'll make sure people know how to connect with NSTA directly with, and as well. So last question, this is the big one. As we know, the morning route doesn't happen without coffee, right? When someone opens up the bus shed between 5 and 6 a.m., they turn on the lights. The next thing that gets turned on is the coffee pot, right? Morning route doesn't happen without coffee. Drivers got to have it. We all have to have it in our industry. So my question for you is, if you had an opportunity to sit down with one person, doesn't matter what time frame of history they're in, 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago, or it could be somebody today, that you could share a cup of coffee with and just have a conversation, who would that person be?
I knew you were going to ask me that question, and I didn't do a very good research of that because I knew you always ask it.
It's the toughest question.
It is a tough question. There's so many people out there too, right? There's, you want to go down, music or, history, President Lincoln, let's say, or something like that.
Right.
But I think I'd just go back to my grandfather and find out, because my dad tells me stories, and I'm always like, how interesting those days must have been.
Yeah.
Why did you get into the bus business, or how did this all happen? So that would have to be the person, and have a cup of coffee with. It'd be my grandfather.
I love it. I don't know if you know this. That was somebody asked me one time in a podcast, well, who would you visit? I said, my grandfather. I knew him, but I didn't know him well. And I was like, so little, I didn't understand like him being in the war, right? World War II. And if I could sit down and ask those questions and understand that time frame that he lived in and served in, find be fascinating. So yeah, same thing, my grandfather.
And then you have that blood kind of relationship too, right? So you're like, okay, I can understand, and how we got here. But so if I, interviewed somebody like President Lincoln or something like that, yes, it would be super interesting, but it would be his time period would be over here. It wouldn't directly affect where I'm at today.
Yeah. Yeah. It has a direct effect. And yeah, I said this earlier, I'm sure he'd be more than proud of what you and your brother have accomplished and will continue to accomplish at Kobussen Bus. So he'd be very proud, I'm sure, of that. So yeah. Awesome. Well, Dan, hey, thanks, man. I appreciate the time. Great conversation. I kept you 1 hour, 2 minutes. I appreciate that. I was like, I think we can do it under an hour. We came close. So yeah, it's, when I get done, people are like always surprised. Like, I can't believe we went 50 minutes. It seemed like 15 or 20. And I hope that was the same here too. So time does go pretty fast.
It does go really fast. It's a great, especially when salesperson would always say, talk about yourself. It's pretty easy to do, right?
People love to talk about themselves.
It goes quickly. Yeah. Right.
So again, hey, thank you very much. Again, NSTA conference coming up here in Boston in July. I know you and I will see each other then. We'll put up the information there for anybody else that wants to check it out.
All right. Look forward to it.
All right. We'll see you in Boston.
All right.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Stay up to date with the podcast by following us on social media. Don't forget to subscribe to the Morning Route Podcast YouTube channel.